There's a really good article making the rounds about supposed independent swing voters. And the argument is from this article that essentially they don't really exist. And this is something I've been talking about with you guys for years at this point. As you know, if you've been around for a while with the show, I have frequently questioned the reality of a truly independent or undecided voter. This election, especially when we think, how could someone really be undecided between Donald Trump and really just about anything else? But even beyond this election or beyond the world of Trump, this has been a question. In this particular case, the contrasts are so clear between Trump and anything else that anybody who's paying any attention and who understands what's going on, it seems almost inconceivable that there would really be an independent swing voter that would rationally and carefully decide either to vote for Donald Trump or for somebody else. And this idea of an independent swing voter has actually almost turned into a meme, the meme of the enlightened centrist, because it makes such little sense, quite frankly. And we saw some interviews on CNN a few months ago, which I played for you, with uneducated white women. What I mean by that is white women without college educations, some of whom had voted for Barack Obama and later for Donald Trump. And it was a combination, as we saw, of people who were simply uninformed about the positions of the candidates and were sort of stumbling around. And then also some simple ignorance was a factor as well. And this gets us to political scientist Rachel Bitecofer's theory, which is there is no such thing as an actual independent swing voter. Rachel Bitecofer very accurately predicted the results of the 2018 midterms. And one of the things that her model does is it doesn't care about so-called independent swing voters. And in fact, her theory about elections lines up perfectly with something that I've been screaming about to anybody who will listen since the day Donald Trump was elected. Elections are not shaped by people who change their minds, but they are changed rather by who decides to vote. I've been saying for years now, trying to convince Trumpists to vote for a Democrat is not a strategy and it is a waste of time. Finding people on our side and getting them to vote is the way to go. There's this conventional wisdom, which is not always so wise, that there's something like if you have 55% turnout in the US, which is a common turnout for elections, that 15% of that 55% that chooses to vote are so-called swing voters and they turn the election. You have to convince those swing voters to vote for your candidate. And this assumes way more rationality, effort, and consideration than most voters are actually putting into voting decisions. It's not a pejorative ad hominem. It's just the reality. And to quote Rachel Bitecofer, she says, the idea that there is this informed, engaged American population that is watching these political events and watching their elected leaders and assessing their behavior and making a judgment, and it is just not true. And as she points out, it's not really about candidates swinging individual voters from one candidate to another. It's about candidates engaging and activating certain coalitions and groups of voters. Now, when other political scientists are asked about Rachel's theory, many disagree and they say, no way. There are swing voters. There's tons of people who voted for Obama and then ultimately for Trump in 2016, or voted for Bernie in the primary and then Trump or Hillary in the 2008 primary, and right, all these different contingencies of people that appear to swing from one side to the other. They exist, of course, anecdotally and in small numbers, but that really what you are talking about is not a number that swings elections. What changes in a more significant way is who is engaged and therefore who shows up. It's not the same people switching between Republican and Democratic candidates that is moving elections. Now, if you believe Rachel Bitecofer, this suggests a totally different election strategy and different metrics for evaluating who can win, the electability question. When you look at a candidate, if Rachel is correct, you think about, would an imaginary regular voter choose Trump or this candidate? That's the wrong way to think about it. Instead, according to Rachel's theory, you would say, what effect would this candidate have on who chooses to come out and vote for them or against them or their opponent, for their opponent, and who chooses simply to stay home? Would Bernie get more Trumpists to vote for Donald Trump? That's the type of question you ask if you believe this model instead of the swing voter model. And of course, if you believe this model, the campaign strategy shifts away from arguing with people you don't agree with to try to convince them to vote for your candidate, simply to finding people that are already basically on your side and making sure that they understand the importance of getting out to vote and activating voters, which is exactly what I've been saying for years. And this is very obvious in a very superficial sense. If you find 10 people that generally agree with your political view who didn't vote last time, the amount of time you would have to spend to get a couple of them to go out and vote is going to be far less than finding one Trumpist and arguing with them about why they should vote for somebody other than Trump. In fact, presenting the Trumpist with facts about why their view that Trump is the right person is completely wrong, as we know from behavioral economics, is almost guaranteed to fail and very often gets people more sort of ingrained in their pre-existing beliefs. If you find people that already agree with you and make it easy for them to vote, offer to help them to vote, give them some general ideas about why it would be really important that they go out there and vote, you're not really convincing them of much other than saying you're allowed to vote and you should vote and that's it. You will make way more progress that way. And that correlates so tightly with the theory that Rachel Bitecofer is putting forward here. Let me know what you think about her article, which is, or the story about her rather, in Politico, which has spread wide, been spread very widely over the weekend. Let me know what you think also about how this relates to contingencies and different enclaves of voters in the 2020 election specifically. One of our sponsors today is Vincero Watches, giving you 15% off your entire order when you go to davidpakman.com/watch. Don't pay thousands of dollars for a high quality watch that looks great, because you don't have to. All of Vincero's watches are made with high-end materials, masterfully built, and they look like something you'd spend a ton of money on. But every Vincero watch ranges from about $150 to $300. I went over to their website and picked out the Bellwether in silver and white. Really nice, elegant look. It's a chronograph style. Wore it to a gala over the weekend. And a lot of people asked me, where's the watch from? Really, really great look. Totally different. They also sent me the Altitude in matte black and red. A much more rugged view of what a watch can look like. Really like it as well as the athletic strap. It's a new year. It's a new decade. It's time to reestablish your style, add something new to your look, and a high quality watch is the perfect way to do that. You can get 15% off Vincero's entire collection when you go to davidpakman.com/watch.